A very good morning, everyone. It is a pleasure for me to be here today. And thank you very much to the Creative Culture Malaysia team for inviting me. It is a shame that we can't be there in person this year, but we can still share different practices that we are doing in the area of playful learning online. I was so looking forward to going back to Malaysia this year, as you might have known that I'm originally from Kuching, from a village which is called Semerbak. Yeah, it is a shame not to be there. But still, we can still share our knowledge, share our practices, share our experiences, and we can learn from one another today. Just to give you a bit of a context, I'm currently based at the Disruptive Media Learning Lab, which is based at Coventry University. So our work is very much around working with colleagues and students across the university to discover and to experiment different ways for conducting teaching and learning. So one of the key strands I'm looking at is very much around playful and gamefulness. How can we create experiences that is empowering by taking inspirations from play and games? So we have worked with stakeholders across the spectrum, those who are very much interested and enthusiastic about new shiny things, new technologies, new methodologies, pedagogies, so on and so forth, and those who are perhaps very much against change. So how do we onboard the different individuals in discovering new practices that could or may enhance the way they practice teaching and learning? It is all about motivation. So you will hear in my talk today, me using the word experience a lot. How can we design an empowering experience? How can we motivate learners? How can we motivate teachers? How can we motivate the community? Because we are the agents of change. So we believe in the power of play. How do we repurpose, remix playful aspects in creating experiences? The emotional connection that we have when we play games, the social connection, the team working, and the different types of competencies and capabilities that we can develop through games. So this is important because play can support learning in all sorts of different ways. There are so many different studies out there that is trying to understand the relationships between play, different types of play, and the different types of learning and skill development that can happen. And how do we encourage, or how do we facilitate and track change through gameplay? We will always use games as an instrument, as an example, even though games in itself is not a particular, it's not a total manifestation of play, but it is a good instrument for us to understand the change, the learning that can happen within gameplay. The rules that we create within gameplay can help us to understand how do we assess or track what is happening within a game environment. So we call this the magic circle. It can be as restrictive as you want it to be, or it can be as free as you want it to be, as long as we can understand what are the different impacts and what are the different benefits that we would wish to achieve through the gameplay experience. So we are learning about play and games through so many different projects which have been funded by different funders from Europe, internationally, as well as nationally. We are trying to learn different aspects of play and games, the different types of experiences that we can create, and different types of benefits and impact that we can achieve. And one of these projects is called Game Changers. Game Changers is all about co-creation. How can we encourage those who are not familiar with games, those who are not familiar with playful learning, to co-create experiences, and through the co-creation, they can learn about the different methods, the different strategies, the different methodologies and pedagogies that they can include in the creation of the process, the creation of the gameful learning experiences. So we have recently won an award for the Gamification Award for Education and Learning in 2019, which demonstrates the impact that we have had, not only in the UK, but beyond. And one of this impact is very much through creative culture. the collaboration that we have in terms of game changers, and you can see the t-shirt I'm wearing today, game changers and creative culture in UNIMAS. We managed to engage with teachers within the Masters of Learning Sciences, as well as teachers in remote parts of Sarawak. So through this experience, we learn about how to onboard those who are not familiar with games. How can we empathize with the situation, with their requirements, with their needs? How can we encourage them and onboard them into the process so that they can practice the co-creation of games and implement it in the classroom? And in the end, they can be the masters of the process. So it's interesting with this particular collaboration that we have with UNIMAS. It is so successful that we are given another pot of funding that is funded by the UK Research Council in the UK under the Global Challenges Research Fund. And the aim is to work with Malaysia, to work with Vietnam and Indonesia in the investigation of play. How can we use playful learning in developing competencies that would help us to improve resilience of the individuals, the communities, as well as the institutions, for example, the schools, the universities, communities of organizations, so on and so forth. And how can teachers work with learners and communities as a package, as a group who can actually drive change in these particular aspects towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, which is promoted by the United Nations, and how can we address the challenges that can improve resilience in these three countries. And playful development is one of the things that we are looking at, because play-based learning is an evidence-based and universal pathway to building resilience in children. So it is important for us to understand the experiences that we want to create, and how can those experiences help build resilience, build the competencies, for example, creative thinking, complex problem solving, socio-emotional skills that we need in order for us to develop resilience in facing uncertainties of the future, as well as the current present. For example, the pandemic situation has really encouraged grassroots activities to happen. And this is interesting to see what's happening in Malaysia in terms of the resilience of the community that we can actually learn from. And we are the agents of change. You teachers are the agents of change. UNESCO believes that the upskilling of school teachers is one of the most effective and direct means of achieving all of the targets of the SDG 4, which is the inclusive, equitable, quality education. How can teachers be involved in empowering one another, young learners, as well as the communities? So we are the agents of change. How do we go about doing this? Definitely. Even though play and games for serious purposes, there is no such thing as a formula. There's no guarantee of success. But through the existing studies, the existing literature, the existing methods that we have looked at in terms of what is happening around the world, we can see the evidence that is demonstrating the effectiveness, the efficacy of game-based learning, playful learning in developing different skills, encouraging different learning and changing behaviors, so on and so forth. And there is also value in the process of game making, where we can come together to create something meaningful and purposeful. Teachers coming together to find new ways for developing experiences that will be relevant and empowering for the learners is important, because we learn through the process. And by iteratively and incrementally developing different types of playful experiences, we can learn from the process. We can learn and gain new skills, which we can practice. And we also look at the process in a scientific way in terms of how can we make it more pragmatic in terms of focusing on the needs and the gaps in learning that we need to address. Then learning about what is the actual dynamics that we wish to happen in terms of the assessment, the activities, where is it, the context of it, the mode of learning, formal or informal. And then we can learn about how can we create an experience around this that will make it more engaging? How can we learn from games? How can we learn from play? And then the last stage is to discover different types of technologies that can enable these experiences to happen. So it could either be analog, it could either be digital, it could either be hybrid. And we're also looking at the process in terms of transdisciplinary process. Teachers, you are the expert in your subject. You are the ones who understand the learners. You are spending a lot of time in empathizing in terms of their needs. How can we work with you to co-create different types of experiences that will allow learning and skill development to happen? So it's important for us to look at this. And one example that I can show here is the approach has been used by teacher-student collaboration, where the gap that they've identified is a difficulty in teaching language, and in this case, teaching Italian. And the lecturer was saying that how can we teach it in an active way, where people can work together, they can move about and learn about the experiences. So they thought about the learning gaps in terms of the learning milestones, and they then think about inspirations from games and play. So they were saying that, oh, Pokemon Go allows location-based gameplay to happen. Can we replicate something similar? So with a collaboration with some of the guys from the MIT in the USA, we use a platform which is called Trailblazer, which is a free platform to easily create location-based games. So they created a game that can teach Italian in the city center of Coventry. So you can walk around going through the narratives, and learning content will be triggered in the different locations in Coventry. So it is such an interesting collaboration that they've had. So they have learned through the process of co-creation, not only among teachers, but also with students, as well as with other researchers who were involved in the process. So of course, how can we simplify this? How can we make it easier to onboard those who are not familiar with the process? In Game Changers, we look at design thinking. How can we encourage people to empathize with the gaps and the needs in the particular area? How can they define the problem that they wish to solve, and how they can ideate different solutions that might address this particular challenge? And how can we encourage them to prototype different solutions and test them, and iteratively go through the process and refining and then refining and refining and testing the different solutions that I've created. So one of the key approaches we normally use in our workshop in encouraging and onboarding teachers is through this approach that we call the Remixing Play Flashcards, because we believe in that a great idea can stem from something that already exists. For example, in this case, the topic that we identify, for example, equality, is a card. So we flash another card of a game idea. How can we create a new solution that will take inspiration from this game to address this topic? So this approach has been used in so many different activities we have done with teachers, and you'll be surprised that some teachers can create a game idea in half a minute. That is amazing. And most of the teachers felt that they were empowered in the process of co-creation. It's like, oh my God, I can't imagine that I could have been this creative. I can create a game idea in 30 seconds, right? And the caveat is it doesn't have to be perfect. We need to break the barriers of people, being creative. Ideas can be improved iteratively, and we can perfect the process as we prototype the idea, and then we can run it with learners, and we can evaluate the learning objectives, making sure that we address the right types of learning and the right types of content that we want to include in a particular game. And the process is iterative. Practice makes perfect. We need to practice build in this iterative process. You can look at the workshop that we normally run for Remixing Play. You can use the QR code, as you can see on the screen. The process is iterative. We need to encourage people to understand the process, being creative, and then refining the actual solution that are creating. And one of the approaches we are using is the learning mechanics, game mechanics mapping, to allow the process to be more pedagogically informed. And I believe that one of the speakers today is going to talk about LMGM as well and how he is using it in his practice. So it is important for us to build a process to onboard. And then when you practice the process, you can make it even more scientific. You can make it even more pedagogically informed as you go through the process and testing the solution that you create. So this approach has been used in so many different ways. As you can see here, there are so many different examples. These are just few examples of the different types of games which have been created in the process. For example, you can see on the top right corner, teacher remix games. A teacher created a game based on hopscotch, and she implemented it and tested it with the young people. How to use hopscotch to teach science. And you can see card games has also been used as inspiration for creating different types of games. In this case, how do we encourage empathy by using pictures and images on cards and getting people to create stories. And you can see another game here, which is called Homeless Monopoly, which has won an award for games in development in 2019. The game has been co-created by college students, with researchers, with the charity that is involved, with the homeless community in Coventry, and we have also included the homeless community in the process as well. And the game, as you can see, is taking inspirations from the game Monopoly. So it's interesting to see that the approach can be used to achieve social change, to address real challenges and real problems. So this is what we want to encourage for teachers, communities, as well as students to actually apply in what they are doing in the learning. And as you can see as well, one of the example here is educational escape games, escape rooms. There are entertainment games. The core idea is you would be locked in a room, and then you will have to go through different puzzles and solve different clues to get the code or the key to escape the room to move on to another room. So we use the same ideas in encouraging different types of skills and competencies to be developed. So this is quite an interesting process for encouraging different people to actually engage with one another in addressing different types of puzzles. So as you can see here, there are different examples of physical games, analog games, hybrid games, digital games that can be created, location-based games as well, through the process. So it is a powerful process that can empower teachers, anyone who are not familiar with games, to create their own games. And here on the screen, you can see some of the examples of games which have been created by teachers for teachers within the Creative Culture project. And also a blueprint or a template for how we can implement game-based learning in your practice, which is also been informed by the work that's been done with the teachers. And the Creative Culture group has also created a play cards, which is called Play, which stands for Pick, Look, Activate, and Yield, which would help and guide you in the process of the creation of playful learning. So I'm sure that the team will be able to show some of this with you today. And space is also important. It's not just physical space. Digital space is also important. When we create experiences, think about the digital space. For example, now we are in a pandemic and online learning and all that, making sure that the playful experiences still happen. And we need to also think about different types of spaces that we can create to encourage creativity for not only our learners, but also for teachers, for the community to come together and be creative and address real challenges in the real world. It is important for us to look at space as part of the process of co-creation, especially in terms of playful and gameful learning. And I believe that the UNIMAS Creative Culture team is working on a project for reusing existing bus that they have in UNIMAS as a space for co-creation that you guys can actually get involved in. And this is an interesting process which we have gone through here under Game Changers. As you can see in the picture, that we have used a school bus to tour different schools, different colleges and universities in engaging people with co-creation. So based on my talk today, it's very much around understanding that the process can be long-term in terms of understanding what can we learn from the experiments that we have done within the Game Changers process, which we then implement and adapt in creative culture in Malaysia, and understanding how we can actually onboard teachers in the process, in the intervention. And through the success of creative culture, we have been funded for the training of teachers in Malaysia in collaboration with the Department of Education under Creative Culture 4.0. And it's interesting opportunity for us to really engage with teachers and engage with teachers for different levels of education in order to onboard them in the process and help them to practice the co-creation process, as well as the implementation and the prototyping in the schools. And also through the ACES project, where we are investigating playful and gameful learning for expanding the impact in social resilience in Southeast Asia, especially in Malaysia, Indonesia, and Vietnam. For the time being, we are hoping to expand this beyond the remit of the project. So this is an interesting opportunity for us to really look at how play and games can change the community and can really empower us. So think about the experiences that we want to create, which will be based on the actual needs of the community whom we are working with. So just to end the talk today, it's all about the impact of play and games, as you can see in all these different projects, all these different collaborations and partnerships with the different stakeholders. It is important to understand that we are the agents of change. We are the ones who can make a difference. We can learn new methods and new ways for carrying out different types of activities which will empower the different communities whom we are working with. And just to give you a bit, some contents you might want to consider in your own time. You can see the Game Changers open course that we have on the website here, as well as our approaches in Game Changers in creative culture has been included as part of the materials for the EU schools under the EU School Education Gateway. So you can have a look here. I'm sure that the team will share our slides to you after the conference, and you can actually have a look at some of these different types of resources. And most of the stuff that I've talked about today are also included in the book that I've written this and published this year, which is called the Game Science and Hybrid Learning Spaces, which you can see here, and you can also access it through the QR code on the screen. So if you have any questions, if you want to contact me, you can contact me through Twitter, or you can contact me through my website. You will see my email address there, and I'm happy to engage with any one of you who are interested in exploring more on the topic of playful learning and gameful learning, and how we can actually work together in creating and making a change in our communities. And thank you ever so much for having me. Thank you to the Unimas team for having me, and I hope you will have fun today. Keep on being playful, learn from one another, and be the agents of change. Thank you very much.